Hey there jugglers, Tom here. This is my intermediate 4-ball site swap tutorial video. In this video we're going to be covering a few basic and intermediate 4-ball site swaps and some more advanced variations with those site swaps. In this video I do assume that you have at least a basic understanding of what site swap notation is, because that is the vehicle through which we will be doing all of our learning. So the site swaps that we're going to be covering in this video are 5551, 7441, 7423, and 633. If you're already an advanced 4-ball juggler, or even an advanced 5-ball juggler, I do think that there are going to be a couple of ideas in this video, or at least tricks, that maybe you haven't tried before. Alright, so the first site swap in this video is 5551. Usually when I introduce a site swap to people that aren't that familiar with site swap notation, I just refer to it as up, 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 over, because you throw 3 balls up and you pass 1 underneath. If you want to try it cold, which is the way that I recommend first learning this site swap if you've never done it before, you start with 2 balls in each hand, you go up, 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 over. So it looks like this. And again. You should practice that on both sides. Once you start feeling more comfortable doing 5551 from the cold position, you should try doing it out of a 4-ball fountain, which is site swap 444444 444 444. Try doing 5551 both out of and back into a 4-ball fountain. Once you start to feel comfortable with that, try repeating the site swap. So going 444444 4444, 5551 5551 4444. So both out of and back into a 4-ball fountain, but repeating the site swap twice. One thing to notice about 5551 is that it is a sided site swap, which means that if you do repeat it, so 5551, 5551, it's not going to change sides. So one of the easiest ways to think about it in this is that the 1, the pass underneath, will always be going to the same hand from the same hand. In this case, I'll be throwing from my right hand into my left hand. So keep working on that until you feel like you have it comfortable. Once you do start to have it comfortable, you should work on flipping the site swap. So learn it on both sides. So learn it starting with your right, as well as starting from your left. Once you feel like you're starting to get both sides a little bit comfortable, or a little bit more comfortable, try flipping the site swap by doing 55514. Adding the 4 at the end means that you'll be able to start it from the right side, and then with the left side as you keep going. An important thing to remember about 5551 is that the 5s are tall crossing throws that are only slightly higher than your 4-ball fountain height, because a 5 is only 1 beat longer than a 4 is. 5551 is a really good pattern for working on your 5-ball cascade. This is because going into 5551 out of a 4-ball fountain, back into a 4-ball fountain, and learning to do so smoothly means that you're establishing your native 5-ball height, your native height for a 5-beat throw. If you find that you're having trouble going back into a 4-ball fountain out of 5551, this probably means that your 5551 throws, the 5s in that pattern, are either too high or too low. So that's 5551, just the basic site swap. Later on in this video, we're going to explore 5551 and some of the variations on the site swap that we can do, namely adding back crosses, turning it into a tennis, and maybe throwing in a pirouette or something. We'll find out. The next trick that we're going to be looking at is 7-4-4-1. Since you're watching this intermediate 4-ball video, I assume that you already know the 3-ball side swap 4-4-1. Basically, 7-4-4-1 is a 4-ball side swap where you throw one ball really high and then you do 4-4-1 underneath, going back into a 4-ball fountain. It looks like this. The 7-4-4-1, it's important to remember that the 7 is a tall throw that goes from your right hand to your left hand, or from your left hand to your right hand. It's a tall crossing throw. If you're having a hard time going from 7-4-4-1 back into a 4-ball fountain, this either means that your 7 is too high or your 7 is too low. Another good thing to remember about 7-4-4-1 is since you're doing it out of a 4-ball fountain, which is 4-4, 4-4, 4-4, 4-4, 4-4, 4-4, and the pattern is 7-4-4-1, those 4s should be the exact same height as your normal 4-ball fountain is. Something interesting that you'll notice about 7-4-4-1 is that, like 5-5-5-1, it is also sighted, which means that if you run the pattern, it'll just be going in one direction. It does not change directions at any point if you repeat it. You can change this by adding a 4 at the end, just like we did with 5-5-5-1, where we did 5-5-5-1-4 to make the balls go in the opposite directions. Same thing with 7-4-4-1. Something that's kind of cool about 7-4-4-1 if you're only running it in one direction, that is without the extra 4 at the end, is that the 4s in the middle, in the 4-4-1 part of it, those are in orbits, which means that those are the same 2 balls every single time. It also means that the 7 and the 1 make this big, beautiful shower thing, so it's, I don't know, it's pretty if you're into that kind of thing. Later on in this video, we're also going to be looking at some variations with 7-4-4-1, namely turning the 4s into shoulder throws, and then putting the 1 behind the back. You can also turn the 7 into a back cross, but I don't know, my shoulders can't take that. The next 4-ball side swap that we're going to do is 7-4-2-3. 7-4-2-3 is pretty similar to 7-4-4-1, except for underneath the tall throw, instead of doing a 4-4-1, we're going to do a 4-2-3. And 4-2-3, as I'm sure you're aware, is the basis of almost every single 3-ball trick that there has ever been. It looks like this. So basically, there are no limits to the number of variations that you can do with this trick. Now, there are limits with other tricks, don't get me wrong, but you probably already know a whole bunch of different 4-2-3 patterns, and you might not be aware of it. And all of those patterns can be incorporated into a 7-4-2-3 pattern. When you do 7-4-2-3, you're going to be making a tall 7 throw, a crossing throw, from one hand to the other, with one hand. So you've got a 7, then after that you're going to do a 4 with the opposite hand, hold on to that 2, don't even move it, then do a 3 from the same hand that did the 4. Of course, when you do variations, you can do a lot of stuff with that 2 that you're holding. So, don't write it off just yet. Alright, jugglers, congratulations, you've made it to the last side swap that we're going to go over. That is 633. 633 is a pretty basic site swap, at least when you think about it geometrically. There's one ball that goes up and down, the 6, on the side, so you sort of just throw one straight up, and you juggle 3 balls for 2 beats underneath it. So if you practice doing a 4-ball fountain, throwing one high, doing 3 balls, going back into a 4-ball fountain, so 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 6, 3, 3, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, that ought to help you start to establish the height of your 6s, you know, whether or not you're able to fall into a comfortable and true asynchronous fountain in between. Yeah, so go ahead, give it a shot. Try and do one side of it first, then try and do both sides of it, and then try and run it for a while. Alright? Cool. Good luck. My hands are so cold!